Hi, everybody. This is a brief run through of everything we expect to see in your Chapter 12 stats project. Couple things. Yes, it does say it's written by Mrs. House and Miss Shemansky because it was several years ago when we first started doing this project. Um, Miss Shemansky is no longer Miss Shemansky, so you may be thinking this has got to be out of date, but I've updated it. It's kind of like a re-release type deal, live action Jungle Book versus the original. The original's better, the music's way better, but this one's got some prettier visuals. Hopefully that helps as we're going over this. First thing that we need to see in this presentation is that who you talk to, what did you ask them, and really important that you tell us what you thought you were going to find from your data before you started collecting and analyzing everything. A lot of you guys forgot this in your packets, so make sure that you include this in the presentation. What did you ask? What were you expecting to find? Very important here. Tell me what your population is, as well as you have to tell us who you actually talked to. What was your sample? A lot of you, it's going to be population as a student body. Sample was the 40 people that you were able to talk to. However, for a lot of you, that's also going to be a little bit different because you had to get some of your data offline, or you'd ask some people outside the school. You're going to need to talk about that population and sample information here. Similarly, with bias, a lot of you guys will have a fairly unbiased survey because you did go around and you talked to the 5 freshmen, 5 sophomores, boys, girls, all that kind of stuff. But if you didn't, if you varied from that, or if you have some reason to believe that your other set of data that I mentioned with the 5 and 5 and 5 and 5 might also be biased, you're going to have to explain that as well. And I just want to say that one more time. You are going to have to explain that. Whether your sample is biased or unbiased, it is very important that you explain why it is so. The explaining is like 80% of the points. If we grade you on this slide out of 5 points, 4 of them come from explaining. Okay, you can be wrong about whether it's biased or unbiased, or at least we can disagree with you, but if you give some reasons, and particularly some good reasons, we're going to let that go. It's just important that you explain. You've got to explain. Here's my first slide with all my measures of central tendency. One thing that I've seen a lot of students miss is the directions do say find the mean, median, and the mode, and that's all they list. But we need to have all this stuff that we've talked about in class. So definitely make sure you include standard deviation. Definitely include all the 5-number summary, and pardon this little bit that's not formatted properly. Apparently there were still some editing issues with the new re-release. But the point is, you've got to make sure you have all this information. Also include this. What do these numbers mean? Explain what's going on. Remember, you're not doing a presentation, but this is originally meant to be a presentation. So in your quote presentation, you have got to write out and explain exactly what's going on here. Now this gives a really good example of the kind of stuff we'd like to see. Obviously these won't all be as in depth. This is, 2 teachers with master's degrees versus a couple 14, 15, or 16-year-olds. We understand it won't be quite to this level every time, but you certainly should be shooting for this as you're going through. This is a very good model to follow. Strongly recommend you pause the video, jot some of this stuff down. Feel free. This is a histogram. There's a separate video on how to make a better, newer version of the histogram. We found some better software to use other than Excel that actually makes a true histogram and not a bar graph. We're not going to get into that right now, but ensure that you have a histogram that shows all of your data. Okay, so this is for everybody that was surveyed. This is that original histogram with mean, median, mode, and standard deviation. 2 most important ones to have here are mean and standard deviation, but this is also probably the best place to put mode. So median will show up later, but definitely have mean, definitely have standard deviation. Mode's a nice one to throw in here as well if you don't have it on the previous slide. This one describes briefly what's going on in the histogram. Some people will have this on this slide as well. It's whatever feels appropriate for you in the images you're able to gather up, whatever layout you use, whatever. But make sure you've got something that talks about what's going on in your histogram. Do not just include the histogram, please. Remember, you are not giving a presentation, so that information has to be in your slideshow. Then once you've done your histogram with all your data, you've got to compare your 2 subsets. Now, a lot of you would do males versus females. A lot of you will do upperclassmen versus lowerclassmen, and a few of you will get creative and do something other than that. But make sure you do it. Okay, make sure you have 3 total histograms, and each one needs to have at least the mean and standard deviation with it. You notice we also went ahead and put our positively skewed information here as well. You're going to want to talk about that at some point. Here's as good a place to put it as any, and that can be considered, part of your discussion for what's going on in these histograms. Then we have to do the same thing with box and whisker plots. Again, there will be another video to show you how to make a box and whisker plot that looks just like this. Some of you might recognize it's Desmos. So I'll show you guys how to do that in a separate video. But make sure you have a box and whisker plot for all your data. One thing I'm missing that definitely needs to be in there, 5-number summary should be on this page. Okay, 5-number summary needs to be on the box and whisker plot page. Then, just as with the histograms, you got to have a separate box and whisker plot for all your boy data, all your girl data. Still include your 5-number summary for both. Why I have them on this slide, not the other, I don't know. If I'm being totally honest, it's kind of late. My brain is only at about 85%. Bear with me. You guys need to use your imagination. 5-number summary here, 5-number summary there. Then, go over your data. Tell us what you learned from doing this. Why do all this statistic stuff and then don't talk about what you learned from it? This is more than just a math assignment. This is you learning like real things about the people that you go to school with or whoever you surveyed. So don't just like fill out a bunch of check boxes and then turn it in for a grade. Talk about what you learned. What did you learn from this data collection? Give us a little bit of insight. And I'm not saying that as a strongly worded recommendation for how you're going to better yourself as a human. It's part of the grade. Make sure that you go over this last bits as well. After that, it should be all done. Thank you very much. Work, work, work.